Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Eliza. I'm the Customer Engagement Specialist here at Pandell. This is our fourth in what we are calling the Pandell Leadership Series, and today's topic is Lay of the Land. So we're very lucky today to have Larry Buzan and Janice Redmond joining us to talk about the lay of the land. Janice is the current Vice President of CAPL and works in business development and project management at Action Land and Environmental Services, whilst Larry is a two-term past president of CAPL and the current president of Buzan LC Consulting. Combined, they have an expansive wealth of knowledge, and we are absolutely thrilled to have them join us today. So, without further ado, Janice and Larry, I will pass the screen off to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Eliza. Obviously, we want to thank Pandell for bringing us into this, more so because they called Larry first. They called me after because Larry said that I had to bring him in today. So I guess I'm Larry's sidekick or co-host for the day.
That's right, and for us, we were so thrilled. We haven't slept for 3 nights before this, so we practiced this in various forms over the last 3 days. So we had enough to fill 4 of these sessions, and we pared it down now to what we think you want to hear and what we want to tell you. So why don't we do our COVID thing and get this thing started? All right, I thought I'd start with a story, and this will lead us down the garden path to start things off. First of all, my very first deal, my very first negotiation was with our past president, Jack Irwin. And he was working with DeKalb Energy, and I was working in the Garrington area of Alberta for Dome Petroleum. And we sat down at a restaurant because that's what we did in those days. And he sat across from me at a table for 2, and he said to me those magic words, "Do we have a deal?" And I shook my head. "Yeah, we got a deal." And he goes, "Give me your hand." And he takes my hand. I'm not going to ask Janice to take my hand. Takes my hand, and he goes, "Let's shake on it." And as I'm doing that, he will not let my hand go. And he said, "Now, Larry," he said, "I'm going to explain to you, if I were you, what I would have done in this deal." And that began my land career. I had to evolve absolutely immediately. I was chastised by myself mostly over not doing the best deal I could for Dome, and a better one for DeKalb, and so on and so forth. And it threw me into a fantastic go forward spin of deal after deal. I did 30 deals with DeKalb, all 30 with Jack. And I can say with a bit of flair at this point, different restaurant, same situation, 30th deal. And I told Janice this earlier, and Jack goes, "Do we have a deal?" And he takes my hand, but he lets it go this time. And he stands up and he takes his jacket off and he loosens his tie. He puts his wallet and his keys and everything on the table and turns his pockets inside out. And he goes, "I've taught you too much. You've learned too well." But in doing so, I mean, this is what I want to get into, is that let's roll it back to those of us who have kids that have toys that need batteries.
It's Christmas.
It's Christmas. And what happens Christmas morning?
The batteries die, or you forgot to pick up the batteries last minute.
Rechargeable batteries. That was something, that was a godsend by whoever invented those. And so we had kids who were happy, not whining to us about what to do, but they had their toys to play with. And who knew that rechargeable batteries would be such a prominent thing in our lives? And certainly the laptop that we're working off today, although it's plugged in so it doesn't go down on us, but the being able to take it and like that, and right up to Tesla. I mean, I was really excited when Tesla released the battery plans for free, and the thought of being able to use that in my house. So evolution. Let's talk about that in terms of what that means as far as land is concerned and the industry.
So I think the biggest thing for us, and most I think of our audience, is landmen like us. We all started somewhere. And so the difference now is that somewhere where we started at isn't necessarily where we are today, right? So a lot of us have had to evolve with the industry and not so much tighten our belts, but understand what it is that we can do for our companies to bring value as the land will exist and evolves. And so the biggest thing that I've noticed with my role, because I started off with the land in administration and then worked my way into negotiating, and I still do some of my own administration. I think that's been a huge backbone for me in this industry, being able to have the ability to do my own paper. I don't think that existed so much back in your time. I don't know. I mean,
No, it was very
you
separated.
predate me.
Yeah, there was land clubs and specialization, and it got more and more specialized. Like we were just talking about, if somebody puts up an ad, hint, hint,
Yes.
for a contract surface and mineral administrator, somebody noticed that, well, that's a unicorn.
Absolutely.
Like, that doesn't exist. It's too specialized. Anyways, let's not go there at this point. But similar, and there's another land example of evolution, and Jim McLean, hats off to him for all the work he's done for CAPL and all of those standard agreements. Well,
yeah, you should share that story, actually. That's a really good one.
Is that good? Okay. Yeah. So he mentioned to me, we had just approved the 2007 CAPL operating procedure, bright and shiny, ready to drive, 40 plus companies involved, 12 lawyers, probably more. And we're all set to go. And Jim turns to me and he says, we have to start a new one right away. I go, why? What the heck's going on? And he goes, they're drilling horizontal wells. That's not captured in the 2007. And we sat there and I went, oh man. And it took us, here we go again, 4 years of getting the 2015 out. And it got better and better with more support and visit, but it had to evolve.
Yeah.
And we were talking about little horizontals, not the big ones. And then the big ones got involved. And then these huge ones and multi spacing units and lots of problems and things like that. And so just from Jim telling me that, and I looked at that impact in my life. And so it's not easy, as we know, as landmen, but we hopefully have a lot of engineers online here as well. It's hard to take the fill in the blank standard operating procedure and say, okay, I got all I need. Thank you very much, Jim. I'm gone. And
some people think it's easy.
They think it's easy. And then all of a sudden they get their first notice, or they get their first, how do I deal with that? Yeah. So exactly. So let's talk about evolution in the world, and as it relates to Canada, Alberta, United States for a big one. Let's talk about the changing role of landmen, but how they can get involved in the changes that are happening out there, because there are a lot of transferable skills. We just got to find our place, and we got to be a little patient, right?
Well, and I think the biggest thing is that sometimes we don't know that it's there because we don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So you got to seek out those opportunities. And I know a lot of the focus for the industry evolving is stakeholder engagement, right? So most of us as landmen either dealt with other companies or dealt with stakeholders in the public, landowners. And I think that's a skill that most landmen have, and it's a skill that is crucial to the stakeholder engagement side. So for any of us, I mean, Larry and I are chatterboxes, obviously. Yeah. So it comes naturally. And I think that most people in the land industry understand that. And that's respected in the energy industry as a whole. And that's why we have landmen still doing their jobs and being able to, I don't want to use the term for lack of a better word, but pivot into other opportunities.
Right.
And that role is stakeholder engagement. So community relations, getting out there, we all love talking to our stakeholders. There's no question, right? So going into that aspect, every company needs that, right? And it doesn't just stick with the energy industry, it's also outside of the energy industry, right? So if somebody needs to move into something else, there's nothing saying that you can't go into stakeholder engagement within insurance or contracts management, right?
Right. Exactly.
I don't know about you, but I don't know how many people get excited about reviewing a 40-page contract. Look at us. So
no, you're talking to somebody who gets excited over little things, but most time that's right.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I know with my company and some of the things that we've been focusing on is working with the other energy sectors and working within, the renewables is a big one for us. My company is based out of Southern Alberta, and I mean, let's be honest, that's the hotbed for renewables right now. So having the opportunity to work with our clients in those areas of stakeholder engagement, you're still doing land deals, right? There's no question that that's happening. But again, there's so many other things that we can push into. And I mean, the sky's the limit, as long as you're willing to look at things from a different aspect and have that ability to move forward. The other big one right now, I'm sure most of us have seen, is Indigenous relations, right? We've all dealt with Indigenous at some point in our land career. So having the ability to move into that is also a factor in being able to, again, pivot. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And talking just about those two opportunities that Landmen have been involved in, can grow into and be purposeful and,
Yes.
right, and valuable.
Provide value, yeah.
And I just want to, I have a number of clients and they deal, we're going to go into hydrogen, LNG, and some other things, but one of the clients issued a statement yesterday, and it was to all of the people in the company, and it was talking about we have tremendous technical abilities in this company to work, but now we need to change the positioning of the groups so they have purpose. To me, that says business. There's business written all over it. And because we're specialized, but because we have land teams, we're not islands. We have certain responsibilities that take us and make us, if we want, to be really isolated. But really, when it comes down to it, we're talking to the mineral, the contracts, the surface, the Aboriginal, the Indigenous. We're talking to all that stuff, and making strategic decisions more or less together. And that's where land sees the picture. It's not easy, folks. It's not easy for people who didn't come from an E&P background, and yet they're great companies, technical companies. They don't see the world we do. And a lot of us are saying, well, we try this or try that, or how it works. Much of my career has been puzzle solving. There's this, I don't know how to get from A to Z, but you know, I can see it, and then my job was to get folks to understand how they could get there. And many times in my career, they did get there. So, and that's true of so many land people. I guess that's why our stories, problem solvers, and networking and storytelling, and I know at in isolation now here since March. I mean, for the most part, that's one of the big letdowns is that. And so I've gone, and you had to, way out of our way to get together with folks on social media, on Zoom, on all these other platforms, on this new platform, which I can't because my laptop won't do it. But that's another issue. It's
Tech savvy, not so much.
It's not me. No, I know a lot of you say it's me, but it's not. And so, anyways, let's talk about. Let's move into this because folks want to hear about green technologies, fossil fuel, all the arguments about it and around it. But I think what we want to talk about is the convergence of energy in Alberta and across Canada and of course the world. So 6 years ago, I would say that a lot of us were lighting up saying, well, what is this green technology coming? It's going to take away my job. I didn't realize, what effect it was going to have on all of us. But there are certain instances in the world that have lit a fire on the combination of fossil fuels and green energy. And the one that brings me to mind is Shell International. They had a huge CDM project, coal bed methane, natural gas from coal. We call a lot of stuff, but 100% pure methane project. But they were using the methane to produce the methane. And Australia put out a regulation that they couldn't do that. And so I heard at a seminar, it was 4 years ago, and the speaker was just rallying around this and saying it was like a light bulb went on his head. He said the convergence of energy, that's what we should drive towards. And we know cars that have two kinds of energies and all kinds of stuff. But in this case, what they did was of course, Australia, tremendous sun, and they used a solar project to fire up their huge CDM project. Well, one of my other clients is down in Australia, and then they're getting into this stuff. And then we looked and said, well, wait a minute, there's lots of convergence happening in Alberta today. And it's burgeoning, and it's starting slow, but it's getting faster. And it's tremendous opportunities for us. And through that, we want to talk about one of the big ones that's coming up, but I do want to talk about how hard it is to develop these things in the pace that we would like it. So there's probably some folks out there that own Teslas and cars. And this story is about the very first day that the charging station on highway number 1 was open. 2 Teslas rolled, it's on the way to Jasper, and I have this from a great source, and they rolled in to charge up. And the 3rd Tesla got on his or her phone and just lambasted the company that was allowing these vehicles to charge, and I have to wait 35 minutes. This is outrageous. Why don't you have 3 charging stations? Well, why don't you have 20? I mean, really, 3. And the issue is, and this is from somebody who knows, is that it's $250,000 to set up such a remote charging station on Highway 2 for 2. To go to 3 is now cost, not an incremental 125, it's $500,000 and more. This company has done their darndest to make sure that we get these charging for free, for the most part. And so how good is that to put yourself out there, right?
Yeah.
And so you look at it, and why does it cost $500,000 plus? It's because it's very dangerous to bring that volume of electricity to that single point to the customer. So think about that. You're going, it's going to take time.
Well,
We're
and
gonna
that's
get
the
there.
thing, right? Like right now, if you look at the world we live in, especially like even here in Calgary, the infrastructure needs to be built to support that convergence, right? So again, we need to have the ability to talk to municipalities, talk to home builders, and see if that ability exists, right? Like if we're all driving electric vehicles, we need to charge them somewhere, right? And you're going to want to have a charging battery facility within your own home, would you not?
I know why, because, but if you live in a condo though, that raises a whole other issue, because condos aren't ready for the kind of electric needs of electric vehicles. And so there may be rules. I know from one story, there is rules against that in certain condos. So you sit there and you go, yeah, but we'll get there. You have to get there. But it's a huge jump to go to all the electric stuff that we want to use. And we're good citizens of the earth, so we say, okay, we want to use that. And we're going, okay, fine. But right now, let's talk about one of the propellants, I guess, of this story is that, let's say, for argument's sake, this is not fact, this is just sort of loose, right? You know.
Larry's words.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say cars and trucks right now, 95% of their transportation fuel is fossil fuels, and 5% comes from other. Could be electric, could be all kinds of things. All right, for us to get to 50-50 is going to take 20 years. And I said it first, a lot of people don't want to hear it's going to take 20 years, but over time it will do that. And that brings us into a discussion about hydrogen. And what's all the talk, and what's all the work, and what's all the money going for hydrogen. And of course, you can't talk about hydrogen unless you're going to talk about CO2 sequestration. So we'll call it CCS. And so I hate to interrupt this conversation with facts.
No, I'm gonna listen now. It's my turn to listen.
All right. So just so we're all on the same wavelength. So there's different kinds of hydrogen. There's blue, there's green, there's brown, and there's gray. And blue is the world that I largely live in and work with. Green, and let's talk about that. Blue is steam methane reformation process, and it's carbon capture. And it deals a lot with fossil fuel production and CO2. And green, of course, is the one everybody would like to get to, only because it's got no carbon footprint. And that's solar and wind using water electrolysis. So in as much as we like to, for the most part, or the government would like to have us all drive electric cars, or we would like to, because of the carbon footprint at this point, it's not going to work because there's not an electric grid that can handle all this. Think about the green, right? The green hydrogen. Where's all the water going to come from? Like, we're talking massive amounts of water to make this happen. And in small areas, in experimentation and so on and so forth, and in some areas it's working really well, but it's pretty small. And of course, brown and gray hydrogen comes from coal gasification and straight fossil fuel production, which represents 95% of the way hydrogen is produced today. It's the gray. So from that, it just shows me is that we got a long way to go. How far do we have to go? Well, I think it's interesting. We can talk a bit about Alberta. Right now, there's 2 CO2 sequestration reservoirs that are putting away about 1.5 each of megatons of CO2. So megatons, 1,000 tons. And the thing to remember is that it's 1 for 8, basically. If you produce 1 ton of hydrogen, you produce 10 megatons of CO2. And right now, the world is producing 830 megatons of CO2 compared to, of course, 83 tons of hydrogen. And so a lot of people are going, okay, so what does that mean from where we're at? We got a long way to go.
Yes.
And so we look at it, we said, right now, 6% of the hydrogen is produced from methane and 2% from coal. That's worldwide. I mean, because there is such a tiny dot with the green side at this point. That's where all of it comes from. That's what's producing the 830 megatons. And so before we get lost in all the data here, I'll just throw you one bit. The cost to store this stuff. So you can store this stuff in a number of different ways. And we know CO2 has been used for enhanced oil recovery for 20 years. I mean, I was involved with Burlington. We had a huge project down south of the border using CO2 to help us produce our oil and gas.
And that's a great example of how technology has helped us converge.
Right, and why we use hydrogen, and of course we get CO2 with it, just as an aside. So hydrogen burns 4 times hotter than methane does. So in combination, right now they're experimenting using 3% hydrogen in and using exactly what you have right now in your, as far as furnaces go. It can take 3%, but you're using 25% less natural gas. So that's a fantastic turnover. Again, it's a great start. But I think what's interesting, the cost for storage is, just so everybody knows, salt caverns, which are very tiny, and they used to be $50 million to get a salt cavern. They're getting the cost down to 30 million, so big dollars. Right now in Alberta, we need 140 of those. So just multiply 30 million times 140, and we're talking about the kind of what it costs to do salt caverns. Anyways, right now it's $1.61 a kilogram, and for H2. The one that we concentrate a lot on in this industry is depleted oil and gas reservoirs, and that's $1.23. Saline aquifers are $2.77, and that's where most of the green is looking at. And hard rock caverns, a lot of them under the big lakes in Ontario, $1.29. And so it begs the question, because the costs are so large, we're going to get there, but who can play the game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they say that the costs are large, but they've also said that the cost of the production has decreased.
And yeah, no question.
Immensely, right? Like the facts that I show is that it's decreased for green hydrogen production has decreased by 50% since 2015, and potential further 30% by 2025. So clearly technology is coming into play. It's helping them move forward with bringing those costs down, making it a lot more competitive, right?
Absolutely, and like we said at the beginning of the conversation, that's what's going to happen. So really, this is all about economics. So what role does the government play other than punitive? The government plays a huge role in helping us get to a hydrogen front that actually makes a difference, because being able to put and store hydrogen is a very small molecule. It wants to escape. So leaky reservoirs, not good. Norway stores a lot of their CO2 under the ocean. The biggest issue they had there, and they've been storing it since 1998, is that if it leaks, it acidizes the ocean. Oops. Okay, so we stopped that. They're going to look at that and say, we can do it. It's just bad. And we don't know how bad. That's the problem. But anyways, so we look at this and we say, okay, we want to store hydrogen, make a big difference, and use a depleted reservoir. So let's go find a 300 BCF depleted reservoir. And we've got a lot of those in Alberta, and a lot of them with wells that should have been abandoned a long time ago, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's a bit negative that way. But what hydrogen can do is you can go in there as a company and you buy that reservoir. And a unit would be great, but let's say you buy that reservoir, you abandon 95% of those wells. You actually spend the money to go in there and do what Albertans want. You want to abandon those wells, and how anxious would a company be to get rid of that off their books? And then you're going to drill. In that case, say 300 BCF, we've run the numbers, you're going to drill 35 horizontal wells back into that reservoir. And most of those are going to be input wells. You're going to stuff it all in there, and then you're going to take it out, because we have lots of uses, like we said, for hydrogen, fuel cells, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about some of the uses later, but the problem you got is, does it leak? Is it a solid? And so the only thing that doesn't leak right now is salt caverns, and they're just not big enough and they're too expensive. So in combination, again, conversions, we're going to do a little bit of both. So we need to experiment with this stuff. We need to go through a period of time, just like everybody else, in coming with new energy sources to look at smaller reservoirs and try them out.
Yeah.
That's right.
Test the waters.
Test the waters before we take the big leap, because none of us want to take a big leap and have it fall flat in our face. Think of what the land role, just for a second, would be involved with hydrogen put away in oil and gas depleted reservoirs. Geez, I don't know, it sounds like the job we just did for the last 30 years.
I was just gonna say, I don't think there'd be a whole lot of difference there, to be honest with you.
Right, and it involves the whole team.
Yeah.
The surface team, the mineral team, the drilling team, the production team, all the new facilities. This is probably, I would say, over the next 10 years, one of the biggest job makers in Alberta, by far. And if you compare, because we have, if you look at BC, oh, now I'm just because we know, look at Alberta, BC, and Saskatchewan. Alberta's where you want to be. Alberta's got the biggest potential by far of that. And
I feel like you're selling the province right now.
I am, and you know what, I've got a PC button on there and that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying, is that speak kindly when you talk about Kenny and Savage saying we need your money, and of course that money they're just printing it right now. But we want to get back to the part where we're making money, so we'd be glad to pay taxes instead of it coming out of an empty pocketbook.
Exactly, and the fact that we might have a lead with the Orphan Well Association and all of these defunct wells. Yeah.
Exactly.
Why not repurpose that, right? I think that's just the evolving change in the convergence of the energy that we've been talking about. So.
And the first thing I always think about, okay, I just said hydrogen's only for the big boys and big girls to play. So that's not true, because what happens is hydrogen has huge uses. And one of the many articles I picked out for facts is the Emissions Reductions Alberta, ERA, put up $7.3 million. They have 2 transport truck divisions, and this is Bison and Trimac. And what they're doing is they actually have hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicles traveling up the QE2, and they can go 700 kilometers without refueling with their hydrogen. And this project's going to take them right into mid 2022, and then they're going to report to all of us how successful that's going to be. And of course, they're going to tweak it and all that stuff. Can you imagine all the trucks, literally all the trucks, powered by hydrogen fuel cells, and the need for hydrogen? So it isn't about storing the hydrogen and it's going to sit there for 20 years. We're going to put it in to take it out.
Yeah.
And so this constant putting in, injection, taking it out is again, it's nothing but jobs for us. And
not just for land, right?
Like, no, for everybody.
Everybody.
We've heard about our communities that are trucking communities and how desperate they are to get going again. Well, this is going to happen, especially with this kind of technology. So I think that's great. And I think there's another group worth mentioning out there right now, and I know Grant owes me for this, is Proton Technologies. And Grant's on LinkedIn. He's a great guy, and he comments on a lot of stuff. And they're using, and I love this idea, they're using a fire flood in southeast Saskatchewan, and that produces steam, and Proton Technology captures with their filter the hydrogen. That's green. And so that's huge. And it's having trouble right now because of the price of heavy oil and all the stuff we're going through, but it's going to go somewhere. Can you imagine if that technology, and whether it's Proton that does it or one of the competitors, I think Proton's well fixed to do this, went up into the oil sands? That it's just made for that kind of technology and all the hydrogen. So you've got CO2 coming out, but it's been recaptured with the hydrogen and redispersed and put in there. And Shell's going to expand their Quest project, and of course the ACTL. And so it's going to be a really interesting future in the near term with this, because we're talking about 20 now, right? With the trucks and all that stuff, to what's going to happen over 20 years. And I just repurposing a depleted reservoir. I mean, I guess I'm too much of a glass half full guy. I can't wait. I can't wait to go out and do that.
Well, yeah, it's exciting times, right? And I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is you can sit on the sidelines and watch it happen, or you can get involved.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I might call my stockbroker later and maybe change my.
Take a look.
Yeah.
Exactly. Who is a Bitcoin collector out there? Yeah, good for you. Okay, so let's talk a bit about, we said pitfalls and promises.
Yes.
right? Because it's like we said, it's a bit of a unicorn that we're looking at, but it's the game we're going to play. And largely because, can you imagine one of the big CO2 emitters being able to economically balance out their CO2 emissions and create hydrogen at the same time?
Yeah.
And so that's really the goal. Like there's 3 big emitters just east of Calgary. They're all over the place. I mean, any cement plant, you name it. And they're not bad. This is what they do for a job. Okay? They're not bad. And
we like them.
Exactly. But they are going to be very, very involved in the solution, and especially as we talk about carbon taxes are going to go up. So how do you balance it off? Green credits. How do you do this? And we find storage companies, and you know who they all are, and they're going to be big, little, and small, and they're going to get involved to do this. So one of the pitfalls is me. I look at this, and not me personally. I'm not getting in the way of this, but I look at it and I go, "Oh, wait a minute! I want it right now. I want it yesterday." And isn't that just like the Tesla charger?
I'm not gonna lie, I think that the majority of people right now would probably be in the same boat as you. Demand, right?
Demand and job wise. I mean, when you buy a house and they throw in the solar panels for free or as an option, please check out how long they last, what it really costs, and if it's actually going to play a role in reducing your costs. You might just trade costs. And for some people, right, that's good enough right now because technology is going to catch up.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we talked about the cost decreasing in some of this technology. And, if you look back at some of the stats, I pulled some stats from the Canadian Renewable Association, and solar costs have declined 89% since 2009. That's impressive.
At the same time that I would say that their funding has been reduced because they're on their own now, or getting to be on their own. That was Ontario's big problem, right? Is that the huge support for the wind folks turns into tax dollars, unfortunately. But that's coming around.
Learned.
Yeah, exactly. So we can use that. The other thing I think is how our lives, and so I'm, you could say at the end of my career. You're in the middle, and
middle, right?
Okay, just starting.
Larry.
No, anyways, I just want to be kind here. Exactly. When I did that deal with Jack Irwin, she said she was going to ask me, and when was that deal, Larry? Was I born yet? And I go, yikes. Okay.
I don't think I was.
we learned so much from land people sharing these things, and especially now that we're all isolated at home, where we have the privilege of working in large empty offices, and so there's no danger. But I look at it and I go, yes, I can see a way back here, and especially with the vaccine announcements and so on and so forth. But really, it's the job announcements. It's those things we want to hear, because we all know there was a time when you just simply said, "I can walk and talk." Good, you're hired, and you can learn.
That's true. That's very true. During the boom days, and everybody remembers those boom days. Like, you would be coming out of school and you would have a job just like that. Right? And now, our programs are definitely dwindling. They're not graduating as many students, and you're not seeing the demand for it either, right? A lot of people are trying to look at other opportunities outside of what we are known for in Calgary is the oil and gas.
Right. And so one of the evolutionary things that's happened, of course, and we had to go through bad times, is that you have companies in receivership, you have a great well inventory. And I know that the Trident assets got dispersed at least 4 different ways. One of those companies has a plethora of money available for LNG, because what they said was, why wouldn't we invest in LNG? Now, I'm not talking about the giant stuff. I'm talking about the little stuff. LNG, and sell that. Now, where are we going to sell that? That's a bit of a secret. I'm working with them. But it's not in Alberta. There's no question that it won't be in Alberta, because there's other places that want and will pay for it. But we'd rather have pipelines, for sure. But there's lots of ways. And land people are the ones who can help somebody who's got money that doesn't know anything about land, very little bit oil and gas, but have these assets. And so when you have receiver assets, who's going to pick up, like we were just talking about that, who's going to pick up the ball and run with it, and maybe with less staff, but knows how to deal with that?
Yeah, and they're complex files, right? Like, you don't know, sometimes you open up a file and you're like, oh, what am I walking into?
Right.
Right. And it does. It takes a seasoned, I don't want to say veteran, but somebody that's experienced to be able to open up that file and understand everything from, and I'll use the term from surface to basement, essentially.
Right.
Like
Oh, exactly. One of the side notes, and folks, if you know about this, that's great. It seemed as a really good example of the whispering of convergence out there when people say, so the Seattle governor was elected on a green mandate. And I said I wasn't going to talk about this. And
what do you mean? It's in big red letters.
I know. Yeah, that's why I saw that. I said, okay, I guess I better talk about that. And so what happened was his first words to his electorate, he said, I was elected on this, and I'll tell you right now is that Seattle and Washington is going to run on wind and solar power. And everybody clapped and all the rest. I saw his acceptance speech and so on and so forth. And I'll bet you he was on the phone half an hour later after that to find out, okay, who's going to provide the backup in case that doesn't work, right? The wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine. What's going on?
Plan B?
What's plan B? And or plan A plus B. And one of the largest companies out there said, well, we'll put forward the ideas. You need generators. And how are those powered? Propane. So just think about the giant fossil fuels that are being used right now when Seattle gets cooler and people want to turn their heat up and they want to do all kinds of stuff. That is a convergence of energy that's being used today. And it's to answer the wants, but the needs,
absolutely,
right, of everybody. Absolutely. And so really that's a big part of what we had to say today.
Thank you, Larry. We have about 20 minutes left in the hour, and obviously the audience has been captivated by what you've been saying. And yeah, you got people thinking. And another comment was landowners are upset that we're abandoning producing wells due to companies going bankrupt.
Oh, and it's ugly out there. And I can say from my experience working for another organization, which you know about, is the small producers.
Yes.
Feel blanked out by lots of stuff, including, and I'm going to raise it now, and I'm saying the minimum bid at the Crown land sales. And so just send all your notes to, no, I won't say it. And, if we want to change that, it's because I truly feel that was done without understanding our business, all of it, right? Like not all of it. We got small and medium and very large companies. And it affects people quite differently, but you're right, Eliza, and thank you for that comment, whoever sent that chat. The landowners are upset. And 3 years ago, in response to that, they got a visit from a solar group. And remember, and we talked about this, Janice and I had a great conversation with the entire association of solar providers. And the farmer was so.
I feel like it was wind.
Oh, sorry, wind.
Yeah,
wind. It wasn't solar. Solar is what led me to the wind. That's right. To talk about that, right? Because when you put up solar, you actually cover so much land, and then all of a sudden, what led to that discussion was the caveats that's put on title, and that conversation is where absolutely, at least in Alberta, is that you need to have a licensed landman procure these sites for folks, right?
Yes, we say you should.
You say, but they don't all don't, right?
They don't all, yeah.
No. And the landowner looks at a much larger document than ours. We're pretty happy with a 3-page or 4-pager.
And that's the biggest difference right now is that the oil and gas industry, you look at the CAPL documents that have come out from it and they're standardized, right? And so when we look at the renewable industry, they're not standardized, but that's also the competitive advantage that some of these companies have, right? So very similar in how some of them are being dealt with. But for the most part, every client that we have, and I say this, I don't think I've seen a document that looks the same yet.
Janice, we have a question here. Is CAPL formally addressing the minimum bid recently imposed by Alberta Energy joining with CAP or EPAC on the matter?
Yeah, I could speak to that. So we did actually send a letter to the Alberta Energy office. We have addressed it. There's obviously our business development portfolio, which is led by Director Jackie Farquhar. Jackie's group has been dealing with that. So we are on the phone with them. We've told them how we feel about it. But again, the thing is sometimes the problem is, and without getting myself in trouble.
Yeah.
Jackie,
Jackie's done a great
She's done a great job.
She's done an amazing job. But sometimes even our own government doesn't necessarily see the value in working with CAPL, and so we're trying to build on those relationships even further. Right.
It's not a revolving door, but it is a door that we're pushing open because we do have some of the answers, and some of the answers are, we all know that a bonus bid at a land sale does not mean a productive well.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the fact that we did actually have some, I would say there was some reward in it because we were able to, for lack of a better term, negotiate, but they did bring the minimum bid price down from what they were initially looking at. So, if we want to call that a win, we can. Is it an overall win compared to what we were paying before? Not so much, right?
I think it's just got people thinking, someone else mentioned, is there an opportunity for CAPL to standardize renewable contracts?
It's a tough situation because I work for a service provider, right? And so actually we work with renewable clients, right? And that's one of the things that they take pride in is their documentation. No different than any land person. We take pride in our documentation.
Yeah.
Do I see that coming? That would be a conversation that would definitely have to happen with the regulator. And in Alberta specifically, that's not the AER, that's the AUC, right? So you're dealing, you're dealing with different regulators, right? And
absolutely.
I think a lot of the thing for us too is that, when you look at renewables, and specifically in Alberta and Saskatchewan, we have an existing industry already, right? So oil and gas has been here obviously a lot longer than the renewable industry has. And not saying that renewables is new, because if you think about it, back in 93, I think I was in diapers. I was still in grade school though. Back in 93 was the first commercial wind farm built in Alberta. That was Kelly Ridge. So renewables has been around in the West. It just hasn't been as much at the forefront as it is now. Right?
Can we touch a little more on that? Because there's been a lot of chat and a few questions just now popped in about, is there a future for geothermal power and job creation in Western Canada?
Well, Western Canada is kind of a big territory.
Yeah.
I would say because we had a family cabin and a condo up at Windermere, and geothermal was all the rage. Because why wouldn't you tap into that stuff?
And just look at Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, and one thing, Eliza, that hasn't been mentioned is what about helium?
Yes.
Right,
absolutely.
Helium, and I thought it was only used to fill up balloons so I could talk funnier. And,
birthday parties and jokes.
Opportunity's still there, and
just don't blow out any candles.
No, but as anybody, folks out there know the price of helium. It's outrageous. Well, what's it used for? Well, go out of this, go on there, look at it, and all of a sudden we're going, is helium something we can chase? Well, Saskatchewan definitely has the cornerstone on and the foundation for most of the helium, but that doesn't mean it's not here, because there are wells, and part of the looking for depleted reservoirs, you get into the chemistry of this stuff, you do find helium producing reservoirs. Well, that could be one of the diamonds in the rough.
Absolutely, and we do have CAPL people actually working within that industry. Donna over at North American Helium.
Right.
So if there's anyone that knows a lot about it, call Donna.
So someone wanted to know just if you have any advice for a good direction for future graduates to the energy industry. How should things be approached these days for those future graduates?
First of all, our backgrounds, Janice's current actions and on the board with CAPL, my previous one is we have a tremendous relationship in the University of Calgary. And we all know that I'd say churning out would be a bad way to say it, but there was lots of students coming out looking for work. And in the heyday, that's why it was there and created, and we had a tremendous way to get that to happen. And then it's changed into the EPLM program. And Janice will know that they're teaching a tremendous amount of stuff about all energy sources. And they're also not limiting themselves to land students in so much as anybody can take this course. And so we have a lot of engineers and a lot of marketers and so on and so forth, out of which I know based on what we talked about today, the evolution of this will turn into jobs. It just isn't big right now. It could be big next year.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I've learned and that I can pass off to, younger generation. I still like to think I'm the younger generation.
Yeah, you are.
And, even just learning from Larry, it's building your network. Let's be honest, the energy industry, as large as it is, it's actually quite small. And everybody, that's in that industry, it's about sharing that network, right? So, one of the things that I've always prided myself on is my network. And I've always said this to people. I say, my network is my network, right? Because, you want to make sure.
I'm gonna write that down.
You want to make sure that the people that are in the room with you remember you for something that's valuable to them, right? And I have no quarrels about sharing my network with anyone, right? I think we're all in this industry to help each other. And I think that's one of the biggest value adds that I've been able to give people is if you see someone on my network, or you see, obviously we don't have any events going on right now, but if you see somebody that has a relationship with me, I'm more than happy to share that. I think that's the biggest thing, is build that network, because it's the basis of who you know and what they can do. Like Larry and I were talking about this earlier, and Larry chimed in about his first deal. And I remember doing some of my first deals and being super junior to it and fresh, and actually having to call on some of my senior people in the industry and be like, so I've got this and I'm a little stumped. Do you think you can help talk me through that? And that's one of the values that I find for not just CAPL, but within the land community itself, CAPL, CAPLA, IRWA, is that everyone is so open to helping each other. And don't close that door of opportunity, right? Because you never know, like if you're doing a deal with someone, one day they might be sitting across the table from you doing that deal. The next day they might be your boss. Like it's always present yourself with that opportunity to network and to create a better opportunity to do a better deal in life.
I would be remiss from mentioning a couple of names here of the people that supported us in getting ready for this talk and having those great factoids. Maureen McCall is a writer for the BOE. She put out an article on November 27th. I was quoted in that, but so it's a little incestuous, but I just look at it and I go, that was a tremendous article talking about opening the doors to more education about, so it is all about more. We want more, and let's get as many facts as we can, because we are the purpose-driven people for business. So we can take all those facts, then we can try and make money with it.
Yeah.
And the other one is a really good friend of mine, my geologist that I pair up with at one of our clients, Ed Marcinell. Eddie's Oil, I love that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's so bright, and he's one of the driving forces out there for the work behind what the clients that I'm working for right now are excited to get into hydrogen, excited to talk about LNG, excited to talk about the future. And, we just have to follow the money, and you can see where this is going.
I feel like he's an honorary landman. I truly do. No?
Yeah, and he knows a lot of the landmen out there. His background is drilling wells competitively. So great. Thanks, Ed and Maureen. Absolutely. And make sure you follow Maureen on BOE and on LinkedIn.
Yes, absolutely.
So any other questions?
Since we have a couple minutes, a lot of people seem concerned about repairing those relationships with landowners.
Okay, so outside of the organizations that we've mentioned, there is a very active organization working right now to change that. And it's cost them as an organization a tremendous amount of money, but they've got the ear of the ministers in Edmonton, listening to it and changing the way that we look at LLR and abandoning wells and making it possible for the land fraternity, for sure, getting involved and turning that around because of networking conversation that started 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we say to the landowners, we're doing our best. Some of those wells, like I said, have changed hands, so they're not going to be derelict. They're going to be active.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things they have to do, of course, is make up for the rental payments that they hadn't made maybe the last 3 years. So that's part of it. Unfortunately, some of the assets, they just don't make money. And I think that we have to look at that. So
well, you have to cut your losses, right?
Yep, exactly. So we can't speak for the economics for everybody, but we know that there's certainly a role for the men to play in that.
Great, thank you. So yeah, Larry and Janice, you have been wonderful. We've had a fantastic group in the audience. I think this is all around success. So thank you so very much for your time. And we really do appreciate it here at Pandell. Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon, everybody.